Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys, coming to you from our regular home studio, except that it's 90 degrees in here, so if we start sweating, don't worry too much about it. The AC is broken. But,
Yep. And it's a Saturday as we're recording this, so we won't see anybody until Monday. But be that as it may, we're here to do another episode of FAIRtax Power Radio. I encourage everybody to sign up at fairtax.org. I've failed to mention this the last few episodes, but when you sign up and give your information at fairtax.org, first off, they never share or sell your information, so you won't get spam because you signed up. But you'll get a series of emails. You'll get Steve Hayes' chairman's report each week, and Steve takes one particular issue of tax reform and gets into it deeply. It's very insightful. Okay, you'll get Jim Bennett's Grassroots Corner, and he usually focuses on a particular volunteer somewhere in the country doing great things for the FAIRtax. Mm-hmm. And you'll get a brief email on Tuesday about upcoming FAIRtax Power Radio.
Now, Jim is also doing a very interesting series about the objections that people can raise to the fair tax. Giving people, if you're talking to someone about the fair tax and they say, well, that rate's not high enough, in order to really be revenue neutral, it's got to be way up here. So he's taking these objections that can be raised about the fair tax and dealing with them. That's really good.
Good. Yeah, Bob knows because Bob records them as podcasts. So you get emails. They're available as podcasts. There's lots of information about the fair tax. So if you're new to the fair tax, first off, we encourage you to read the books, the white one first and the red one, and also online at fairtax.org. Tons of information there. You would go to fairtax.org and go up to news, and you come down to Chairman's Report Archive, press releases, which Paul Livingston here in Florida sends out an occasional press release, and there's a page for the FAIRtax Guys, and the Grassroots Corner show up on social media, Facebook and some of the others. So lots of good information. We encourage you to do that.
Okay, can I go now?
Yes. Bob is itching about this. Is congress.gov.
Oh, I love this.
Congress.gov, and in the search bar you put Internal Revenue Code in quotes, and it'll come up with mucho examples.
Now, there's some filters on the left side. I make sure you check only legislation. You're not interested in committee reports, the congressional record, or House communication. Check only legislation and only the current 117th Congress. And as of today, as we're recording this on March 27th, if you put Internal Revenue Code in the search bar and close it in quotes, you get back now 359 hits on that search.
Yep.
And they've been in service in session how many days?
I calculated 47 for the House, and that's 7.6 proposals per day they're in session. All right, even with all this other stuff that's going on in Washington, they're still pumping out the proposals to change our tax code at the rate of almost 8 every day they're in session. It's crazy.
And they're all nuts here, some of the stuff that they propose.
Yeah. For example,
unfortunately, some of the stuff that we look at doesn't have the full text yet. We can only just go by the description. And this is H.R. 2254 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to modify the treatment of foreign corporations and for other purposes. Now, that's one of the things I don't have the text in. I don't know what they're really talking about. But we're talking about how do we treat foreign corporations in our tax code.
Yeah, if they're foreign corporations, then what do they have to do with our tax code? I don't understand.
Well, I'll tell you what the fair tax does to foreign corporations.
Nothing.
But it puts our corporations, American manufacturers, on a level playing field with those foreign corporations. Because the foreign corporations, the European countries especially, where there's a VAT tax, when they produce a product for export, the government refunds back to the manufacturer, making their cost to produce that a lot lower.
That's right. And
so when foreign goods go on the world market, they are at a price advantage over Americans because the American goods still contain all the embedded costs of the income tax system, even when they are produced for export and for sale on the world market.
Yeah.
So yes, that's that one's we're not really sure what they're talking about. Now here's one. The next several of them just speak again, Ron, to the wonderful stability that is built in to the tax code.
Like there's none.
H.R. 2191 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to repeal the limitation on deductions for personal casualty losses.
To repeal the limitation on deductions for...
Apparently when you have a personal casualty loss, how much you can claim is limited at this point, and they want to take that limit away. And then they'll put it back, and then they'll take it away, and then they'll put it back, and then they'll take it away. So, the point in time at which something happens, you just kind of take a potluck as to whether it's favorable or not in the tax code. That's absolutely crazy. And here's another one, another H.R. 2184, to amend the Internal Revenue Code to repeal fossil fuel subsidies for oil companies and for other purposes. So again, there's something that you had, and then they're going to take it away, and then when the power shifts over to the other party, they'll put it back.
And the lack of stability hurts businesses. They don't know how to plan. And businesses don't like an environment in which they can't plan. So it's not good for business, which means it's not good for jobs and it's not good for the economy. Now, these are proposals. They're not actually in the tax code, but some of them will be, and you just don't know. So, but with the fair tax is very stable. It's a consumption tax. It's the same from one day to the next, from 1 year to the next. It's very simple. Businesses will love it. The economy will prosper, and Americans will be all the better for it.
All right. This appears to be the Senate companion bill to the one earlier. This is S 1027 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to repeal. It's worded a little differently. To repeal the temporary limitation on personal casualty losses and for other purposes. Yeah. And again, you want to talk about winners and losers?
Yeah.
The tax code picks them with abundance, and this last one is S 1017, a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to establish a tax credit for the production of hydrogen using electricity produced from renewable energy resources. You got that?
Oh my word.
You want me to repeat that? Tax credit for the production of hydrogen using electricity produced from renewable energy resources. So if you take electricity generated by a windmill and use it to produce hydrogen, you get I guess there are some cars that run on hydrogen now, not a whole lot, but there's some. And so you get a tax credit for doing that, but only if you use electricity produced from renewable sources. Wow. Don't you just love the tax code?
Yeah, the chemistry end of that, I like it. As a
retired chemistry teacher can figure that out.
But in the tax code, no, that's nuts. All right, so...
Yeah, I could keep on digging for a while, but you'd fuss at me for taking too much time.
I think everybody's got the idea that our friends in Congress just have an incessant, unquenchable thirst to change our tax code, and the only way to fix it is to pass the fair tax.
Yeah, we'll do this again next week, for sure.
Yeah, so we definitely will. So, all right.
We want to recognize somebody that we know, that we've interviewed at least once that I remember, who has been a very knowledgeable, nuts and bolts guy on how the fair tax works. And every now and then we just kind of have to go back and explain how it all works. So our friend Kerry Bowers has done something. Explain what he's got here.
Kerry has written what he calls the Fair Tax Act of 2021, H.R. 25, Key Points Summary. Essentially what he's done is taken the entire bill, which is around 132 pages, something like that, and condensed it down into a PDF of about 13 pages. And it's plain language. Even mere mortals can understand it.
Yes.
Right?
But when you realize that it doesn't take 130 some pages to describe the fair tax, a lot of those pages are references to current statutes that will be repealed by the fair tax. You can see how it's of course, we'll give Kerry credit for being a good condenser, that he can take this and figure it out.
This is really good. Yeah, when I first read through this, I thought, oh, Bob and I got to do this, because if you don't have to read the bill, because for one thing, it'll drive you nuts because it's written in legalese and it's really hard for the layman to understand. But this, and we're going to put this in. It's going to be posted in fairtax.org under Get Involved, and you come down to the toolbox and you'll be in the printed materials there, okay? So you'll be able to download this, and we'll post the link. Once it's there, we'll post the link on all our social media sites. Okay,
Kemosabe, have at it.
Okay, well, of course, you know that the fair tax is a consumption tax. The first paragraph talks about it being a national sales tax, hereafter called the sales tax, and introduced to the 117th Congress. And if it became law, if they passed it, would take effect on January 1st of 2023. Okay? Now, I like the second paragraph here. I've actually highlighted some of the parts that I find interesting. The fair tax was first legislatively introduced in 1999 to the 106th Congress by John Linder, who was a congressman from Georgia. He was the primary sponsor. Upon its introduction, it had equal bipartisan sponsorship, I should say, with 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. And we're sorry to report that because of the polarization in Washington, we no longer have any Democrats sponsoring this, which is really sad, because Bob and I have tackled this before. The fair tax helps everybody. It is not a partisan issue.
Yeah, the bipartisanship looks good. The only 2 from each side needs to be worked on a little bit. But you're right. You do not have to be a Republican. You do not have to be a conservative to like the idea of bringing home your whole paycheck with no withholding. You don't have to be a conservative to like the idea of never having to file a tax return again.
Yeah, individuals, no record keeping.
Crossing ideological and party lines, everyone should like getting a tax refund every month.
Yeah.
So the fair tax does not pick winners and losers like we saw in the Congress.gov segment earlier.
Right.
Everybody, regardless of your party affiliation, regardless of your ideology, all you have to be is a legal American with a valid Social Security number, and you get the tax refund every month. And we've gone over that several times. We'll do it again, but that's cool.
Another paragraph here, it makes the point that it replaces, and he lists federal income tax, payroll, self-employment, alternative minimum, capital gains, estate, gift, and corporate taxes. It replaces all those. All those taxes go away. And in the next paragraph, this is great. U.S. Code Title 26, Internal Revenue Code, Subtitle A, Income Taxes, Subtitle B, Estate and Gift Taxes, Subtitle C, Employment Taxes, Subtitle H, Financing of Presidential Election Campaign, would be repealed in their entirety and replaced with Subtitle A, Sales Tax. All the income tax. That's a short way of saying what Bob was mentioning a minute ago, that a lot of the fair tax legislation is all the parts of the income tax that would be replaced. And he's got it down there in one sentence. So, all the income tax stuff goes away. It's replaced with a sales tax. Hallelujah.
Key point there is replace. I mean, how many dishonest political ads have we heard? My opponent wants to add a 23% tax to the cost of everything you buy, and conveniently forgets to tell you that it replaces a lot of taxes they're already paying.
That your income tax, withholding, and all that nonsense goes away, and it's replaced with a simple sales tax.
Yes, replace. The income tax goes away. The corporate income tax goes away. Meaning that the United States becomes the most tax-friendly place on the planet to do business. You talk about bringing business and jobs to our shores, that'll do it. And people, you have to remember and realize corporate taxes are just simply another cost of doing business that gets passed right on to you. So getting rid of corporate taxes doesn't mean that your taxes are going to be going up because corporations are paying something now and under the fair tax they won't be. That you will be getting the cost of doing business goes way down with a fair tax. And that's good for everybody.
Yeah, it certainly is. All right, the next one here, I like this. All taxable properties and services would be assessed the sales tax once and only once, all right? Now, services, there's no such thing as used services, but there is used properties, used items, okay? A used car. If you buy a used car, it's not subject to the fair tax. If you buy a pre-owned home, and almost 90% of the sales of homes in this country are pre-owned homes. I guess we don't call them used, all right? But anyways, so not subject to the fair tax. Only new goods and services are subject to the fair tax. That really helps the people that most need it, the people who are at the bottom of the income scale and they're struggling to get by, because when it comes time to get another car, no fair tax, and when it finally comes time to buy a house, on the used house, a pre-owned house, no fair tax. Legally avoid the fair tax by buying used stuff.
Now, you'll hear a lot of people say it's not right and not fair to tax services. But the truth of the matter is that service providers, your doctor, your landscaper, anybody that's providing you a service as opposed to selling you a product, currently any money that you pay for a haircut, for landscaping, for a doctor visit is taxable income to the provider, and therefore the price of those services today includes the cost of the income tax system. So when you take those costs out of the price of services, and again, you got to make up the revenue. If you're getting rid of one tax, you have to replace it with something else. So you replace the current embedded cost of the income tax system in the price of services with the fair tax, it still kind of becomes a wash.
Yep. And he talks about the fact that the tax rate that is selected, they did a lot of research on this, the fair tax rate is 23%, and that figure was arrived at because it will be revenue neutral. It will not, of course, the spending that's going on in Washington right now is something we've never seen before.
The income tax doesn't even begin to match the spending levels.
No, but it will provide the same amount of money to the government that the income tax is providing now. So it's designed to be revenue neutral. It's not going to starve the government, and it's not going to give them more than they're currently getting. It's designed to be 23% inclusive, and he goes through, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because Bob and I have talked about this before. It's 23% inclusive. Well, why is it inclusive? Because the income tax is inclusive. If you get a job at $50,000, you know you're not taking home $50,000. That includes the income tax. So the fair tax is the same way.
Inclusive, though, also means that the tax is included in the price, like the taxes on fuel. It's not going to turn a $100 item on the shelf into a $123 item when you get it to the cash register. That's right. But one more thing, talking about revenue neutrality, the fair tax is going to light off double-digit economic growth. So just because of that, revenue to the government is going to go up.
That's right.
No doubt about it.
And that has happened. That happened with John Kennedy when he lowered taxes. Revenue to the government went up. It happened with Ronald Reagan, and it happened with Donald Trump. Lowered taxes, the economy was booming, and the government raked in more money because everybody was paying taxes. Everybody was employed.
So the folks that are saying the government needs more money, we need to raise taxes, are just not paying attention to history.
No, they're not. They're not. So,
oh well.
Okay, he talks about barter, sales tax. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but sales tax liability for barter transactions is the same. I don't think there's a lot of bartering going on these days.
No, some, but not a whole lot. But what is going to be rise is the use of cryptocurrencies. Steve Hayes did a whole chairman's report on that a few weeks ago. But again, it doesn't make any difference whether you accept U.S. dollars, French francs, or Bitcoin for a sale. as payment for services or goods, the price of those services or goods will include the fair tax, no matter how you pay for them.
Yep, that's right.
So that's cool. There's not a whole lot of complication introduced into that because of there.
He talks about what a used property is, okay? So if you go to a car lot and you buy a new car, the fair tax will be assessed on that. If you buy a used car, one that somebody bought new at one time and paid the fair tax on, when you buy that car a second time, no fair tax. Now, for businesses, let's say a business buys a pickup truck, all right? Because it's for use in business, all right, there will be no fair tax assessed on that. Business-to-business purchases will not be subject to the fair tax, okay? Because that just makes it more complicated. But at some point, they might keep it for 3 years and then sell it to one of their employees, okay? At that point, the fair tax has to be assessed on whatever that person paid for it, okay? Because the fair tax will be assessed on that vehicle once it enters the normal market, the consumer market. So,
time is getting away from us really quick, but here's a really important point that we have heard before. Well, if you don't pay the fair tax, the government's coming after you. Not so. The person purchasing a taxable product is liable for the sales tax, but that liability ceases when the sales tax is paid to the seller, and the purchaser is provided with a receipt indicating the payment. If the seller doesn't transmit that tax on like it's supposed to, that's his problem, not the consumer's.
Yep, that's absolutely true. And we had a guy running around Florida saying just what you were saying there.
Well, that's what brought me that.
If your lawn guy doesn't turn in the fair tax, the government's coming after you. No.
They can't, because they don't know who you are.
Yeah, and it's the vendor's responsibility for turning that in. And keep in mind, 45 of the 50 states have a state sales tax. They've been doing this a while. They know how to look for fraud, okay? And it will be the states that collect this. It goes from the vendor to the state, and from the state to the federal government, but not to the IRS, because the IRS will be closed down in a few years.
Yeah,
right?
that's his next little highlighted point here. The Internal Revenue Service will be replaced, and we don't have our sign. Defunded. Have you got it?
Yeah.
Okay, there it is.
Someplace.
Hold it up there. The Internal Revenue Service will be replaced and defunded within 3 years of the effective date of the sales tax. That means once the fair tax takes effect, the IRS will have 3 years, which I think is a rather generous amount of time, to wrap up whatever ongoing business they have regarding cases from the past. But from the moment the sales tax is enacted, the IRS doesn't touch that at all. But they'll be defunded within 3 years. I love that. Yes. Replacing the IRS will be a sales tax bureau.
Yeah, just like the states have now.
And I bet you anything, the Sales Tax Bureau will not have a $12 billion budget and employ hundreds of thousands of people like the IRS.
Yeah, because they're going to get the funds from the state. I mean, it's all going to be done by computers, Like I said, the vendors, and my wife and I did this when we had our truck leasing program. We had to set up an account. We had to calculate the sales tax, which was very simple. Send the money to the special account, fill out a report, send it to the state. The state went into that account, got the money. That was it. It was very simple. Same thing will happen with the federal government. Very simple, automated.
Okay, moving right along. The bill contains a sunset clause mandating that all provisions of the Fair Tax Act and any subsequent amendments to it is eliminated if the 16th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution is not repealed by the 7th year after the date that the fair tax was enacted. There's a 7-year window for amending the Constitution. And that's in there to make sure that we never have a sales tax and an income tax at the same time.
Yeah, that's a very bad idea, because we know Congress cannot control themselves. I mean, there's some people up there that like the idea of, say, a VAT tax and an income tax, okay? I'm not going to get into that, but the VAT tax is a different form of consumption tax. You don't want to give Congress an income tax and a consumption tax, because they'll just tax us into oblivion.
Okay, real quickly, we can touch on his notes about the family consumption allowance and the prebate.
All right. To reduce the regressive effects of a sales tax, a rebate, aka the prebate, is issued on or before the first business day of each month to legally residing individuals or families having annually and voluntarily registered for the rebate with their administering authority. Okay, and it says see attached rebate schedules, and he's got that towards the end of the document. Okay, he's been very thorough. Again, this is a great document. It takes the whole legislation, which by today's standards is not up in the thousands, it's over 100 pages, condenses it down to 13 pages. Wonderful.
And we've made it to page 3 before we've run out of time.
Yeah.
So again, you can go to FAIRtax.org and read this whole thing. We got time to sneak one more in. The FAIRtax Act removes the marriage penalty inherent to the DHHS poverty guidelines, thus increasing the FCA, family consumption allowance, and subsequent rebate to married couples. How cool is that?
Yep, the rebate will be issued by the Social Security Department via a smart card or direct electronic deposit. In other words, it's done automatically. That's pretty good. All right, and talks about it. It's got a section on administration. All right, it's got a section on businesses and so forth. Anyways, it's a great document. Kerry has done us a great service by condensing the 133 pages of legalese into 13 pages of normal, everyday English. Okay, it's wonderful. So nobody wants.
So in other words, this is the Cliff Notes version of the FAIRtax
exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what
I used those very extensively in high school.
Oh, really?
Yes, really. Of course, there are no Cliff Notes for chemistry. You couldn't get me, but my English teacher was.
Anyways, I think it's time for a call to action, okay? All right, I already mentioned join AFFT by going to fairtax.org and signing up. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, there's a Get Updates place where you can fill in your information. All right, and we encourage you to do that. And you can also go join the 1040 Club by going to fairtax.org/1040, at which point you commit to sending $10.40 a month. It is a national organization. They have sizable expenses each month, and those recurring donations are very important to them.
Okay, share FAIRtax Power Radio on your social media.
Yeah, please.
We're in a lot of different places. Facebook is where it kind of originally streams, but we've got a YouTube channel. We've got, podcasts. We're on 3 terrestrial radio stations. Working on more. Bob Scarborough is working on that for us. But please share these things. The more people know about the FAIRtax, the quicker we're going to get it enacted.
And FAIRtax Power Radio is a very simple way to keep up on what's going on. All right, along with Steve Hayes' Chairman's Report and Jim Bennett's Grassroots Corner.
And we're kind of starting to see a lot of COVID restrictions lifted. So especially during the next election cycle, when they start having town halls again, go to FAIRtax Store and get one of these and take it there. Yeah,
that's right. FairtaxStore.org. FairtaxStore.org, and they ship every Friday, so put in your order, and our good friend Mike up in Jacksonville, he sends it out every Friday, so show your support by ordering some product.
And one more thing real quick, catch Wally's World.
Oh yes, that's coming up next month. It'll be at the end of April. Another great episode by Jade Wally, our CPA friend who lives in Colorado. The guy not only is he an expert on FAIRtax, but he's an expert on CPA stuff.
And we need 500 people at the next CPAC, so make your plans to go. And that's going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
Reminding you the FAIRtax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it. Follow the FAIRtax Guys on social media and their own website, FAIRtaxGuys.com, and check back every week for a new episode of FAIRtax Power Radio.